Hey flower folks, welcome to Sheer Inspirations. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how I've built my soil in my cut flower beds over a period of years, and I continue to do so. If you're new to the channel, my name is Sheer. I am a botanist and a horticulturist here in Southern California, High Desert, Zone 8B. My goal via this channel is to empower the home gardeners or anyone wanting to learn with the knowledge for them to be able to grow their own cutting garden year-round, regardless of where they live. So together, we can reduce the ecological carbon footprint that is left when flowers are flown in from overseas. Today, 80% of the flowers sold in the markets are coming from South America and Ecuador. Jumping into the video, we are going to be talking about the most easy method that you can use, which is to collect your kitchen waste, your wet waste, including bones, skin, fruit waste, veggie waste, eggshells, fish head, anything that is otherwise going to be thrown in the trash can. You want to collect that in a coffee container like I have here, or any other container. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Once that's full, you want to select an area of the garden that doesn't have an active plant growing. If the plant is dormant, that's fine. You can do this there. But you want to give this at least 6 weeks to break down, because what happens is if you do this near an actively growing plant, the organic matters are going to decompose, meaning that the nitrogen is pulled from the soil to break these down. So you don't want to do this with active growing plants. You want to do this in an area where there's either no plants or the plant is hibernating for it to have the best results. You want to dig until the subsoil, which is about 8 to 12 inches for me. Afterwards, I start getting into sand. Depending on where you're located, you might get clay or rocks or whatever. Personally, my favorite method is to use the drill auger. If you don't have that, you can also hand dig this, but I do this as soon as my bucket is full and bury this into the garden. When you are building soil for your flower beds, you want to make sure that you're not giving too much nitrogen. You don't want to put things like grass clippings, because that's way too much nitrogen. What nitrogen does is it gives plants way too much green growth and it's not producing anything. Nitrogen is good for, say, lawns or vegetables, but for flowers you want to have a soil that is high in potassium and high in phosphorus, so that way not only does it have strong roots, but it also has the ability to produce more flowers for you. And even if you are growing fruits, it's the same thing. But especially cut flowers, you want them to be more productive, so potassium and phosphorus need to be high. A lot of times you will notice that synthetic fertilizers that are for blooms, if you flip the packet over, it will be high in potassium and high in phosphorus and not high in nitrogen, and this is the reason why. Now, a tip here for my Insta gardeners: if you are like me and if you don't want to wait a year before you start planting the perennials, the picky perennials that need the healthy soil, what you want to do, and while you're building this, because in the long run you want to do this, you want to go ahead and start burying this stuff, but while you do this, what you want to do is cut out an area in your garden that you can do a flower bed for just annuals. Get yourself some organic mushroom compost or organic grape compost from a nearby vineyard if you have one, or you can look up online sources. Rake that in with your soil, and depending on where you live and what season it is, you can either grow hardy annuals, sowing them in the fall, or you can grow tender annuals in the spring, getting seeds from the Dollar Tree. So you're growing everything at a very frugal level, and you have things to cut in a matter of 2-3 months, versus this process, which is going to be a long-term process taking about a year or so before you start investing into your roses, before you start investing in your dahlias or anything like that. Of course, there are perennials that do well in poor soil, but poor soil comes with its own cons, meaning that the flower production won't be high. Even hollyhocks, zinnias, cosmos, sunflowers, they all can do well in poor soil. But if you do this organic mushroom compost method for instant gratification, or the grape compost for instant gratification, what you will see is you will have high production of all of these cut flowers while you're you're building soil for your long run flowers like peonies, you know, dahlias and roses and so on and so forth. The best way I have found to do this is you can collect all of your say coffee and tea in one container, and you can collect your compost in one, and coffee and tea can just be thrown out, as in like in a teaspoon. You can just put it next to the plant in a just too near its roots, and you don't have to bury that, versus the compost, which you would then have to bury. Keeping in mind that when the soil microorganisms are working to break down the soil, there is no heat involved here. Hence why the time period that it's going to take. Also, if you live in an area where there are rodents, crows, or you know, raccoons or whatever, that they're not going to be able to dig this up. You're either burying it deep enough for them to not be able to dig it up, or you're securing that area with either a chicken wire or something of that sort, so this is not easily diggable by the rodents, which is going to be another problem on its own. I've had crows digging this up when I was burying it only 4 to 6 inches deep, and that was that was a no-go. I had to fix the problem by burying it even deeper, and this method can be used the entire year. Everything that you see here in my cutting garden, I have grown via this method. I have not purchased anything. I am an extremely frugal gardener. I don't believe in spending a lot of money. I am someone who follows the minimalistic approach and the frugal gardening. If you don't have to invest that money, you shouldn't have to. And this is valid for no matter what hobby you're picking, if it's gardening, if it's sewing, if it's anything, because there's so many resources available to us. If we just look hard enough, you have seed libraries, you have plant exchanges, you have the city sometimes giving out free compost. So take advantage of this to build your soil to a place where you can grow no matter what kind of plant you want to grow. Sometimes you can even push, say, grow tropical garden. I live in a desert, and it's hard to believe for people to come here and see that I'm growing an English cottage garden, which is a cutting garden in the middle of the desert. So anything is possible if you are willing to just put in a little bit of work. Scientifically, this method has been used for many, many years, before the trash cans were around, before the curbside services were around. People were dealing with their own trash, and what were they doing? They were burying all the wet waste and burning some, and so on and so forth. Of course, that has its own bad things, but you're reducing all of this garbage going into landfills, and then because they're in plastic bags and rotting, it is then leaving, it's creating methane gas, which we all know is not good for the environment in the long run. So this is the best way to have to utilize all of your wet waste and have a healthy soil and a healthy cutting garden. And that was the video, guys. I hope you got value out of this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.